Hey everybody. So in this video, I will be walking you through my process for making Claire Saffitz Apple Tart from Dessert Person. This was an incredibly rewarding recipe. It took me a while. I made another video about how to make your rough puff pastry, so go check that out if you haven't watched that yet. That is the foundation for this recipe. So once you get that right, the rest is really just slicing and cooking down apples and laying everything out to look pretty. So it's not too challenging a recipe, but it definitely is a time commitment and is sure to be a showstopper at whatever table you put it on. So I hope you watch this video and maybe even try it out yourself. Thanks so much for watching. Okay, so for this recipe, you need 6 apples. I used Pink Lady, but she also says you can use any sweet-tart baking apple. The first 3 you're going to peel, and this is gonna help us cook down our compote, and then the second 3 are actually sliced and put on top of the tart. So I'm just peeling these apples and then slicing them into small chunks. Sorry, I'm not in the market. If I quit buying, you can't sell me anything. No, so for the compote, you're going to combine brown sugar, butter, salt, vanilla. She calls for a vanilla bean. I used vanilla bean paste. And you're just gonna have that over medium heat and you're gonna start cooking it until it bubbles. Once it starts bubbling, you want to swirl it every now and then. And once the bubbles get bigger and take longer to pop, then you know that it's time to add your apples in. So here are my sliced apples from the first step. I'm adding those in and I'm just gonna mix those together and cook those down for a bit. So then once those apples are cooked down a bit, sort of translucent, you add 1.5 cups of apple cider. I actually used apple juice and it all turned out fine. But you're just gonna cook that until the apples become even softer, and then you're gonna use a potato masher and mash them up. I think I mashed mine too much, but in the end it really didn't matter. All right guys, it is 9:30 p.m. I am still cooking down this compote. It's taking a long time. But once this is done, I'm gonna be done for the day. I have the cake wrapped. I'm gonna keep it in the springform pan. I know I'm talking about this in a different video, but this is all part of Thanksgiving. So I'm going to tomorrow roll out the rough puff pastry, spread this compote on top, and then thinly slice the apples and bake it all together. So this will all come together tomorrow morning, and then the cake is done. So we'll just cut that and put it on the table. So it took a lot longer than expected, which is why I'm working so late for this to cook down. You just don't want it to be watery. You want it to be spreadable, almost like a paste. So I stopped at this point, and then it did firm up when I put it in the fridge. So here's my rough puff that I made in the previous video. So I'm just beating that with my rolling pin to make it a bit more pliable. And then you want to roll it out to about 13 by 9 inches. And you'll see I'm gonna be pretty precise about that because I want everything to fit, and then I'll trim off the sides. You're gonna add this to a prepared baking sheet with parchment paper, and then there are a couple steps before you can even add the compote. First, you wanna poke it all over, leaving about a 1-inch border all around the sides, which then you're gonna use egg wash on. So this just helps the middle not puff up, but the outside get really flaky and puffy. So on top of that egg wash, sprinkle some sugar. This is sugar in the raw, demi-ara sugar, but you can really use white sugar if you don't have it. And then I go into thinly slicing my apples. So you'll see I'm just using the front part of my knife to drag down, and I'm keeping all of these bundles of apples together, getting rid of the sort of rounded pieces on the sides, but keeping the bundles together so that I can lay them out really pretty like Claire does in her video. And now here's the compote. You can see, like I said, it did firm up, which was nice. So I'm just gonna spread this out to the border that I've created, and then I'm just going to lay out my apples. And I took time to sort of do this in a pretty way. So you can make a design on top, but just note that the apples are going to shrink when you bake it, so they're gonna come out looking a little bit different. This this recipe has a lot of glazes. So this is 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of apple cider. And you're just gonna brush that all over the apples before you put it into the oven. Once it's out of the oven, you can see it was nice and brown and flaky on the sides. The apples had taken on a little bit of color. You're gonna mix some apricot jam with apple cider and then do one final brush over the apples. You're supposed to strain this. I didn't, which I'll talk about, and it was all fine. So you can see there might be slight pieces of apricot on some of the apple slices, but that's not a detail that I really care about. You can see a couple there. Yeah, it turned out fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. Everybody really enjoyed it. I thought it was perfect. I paired it with the flourless chocolate cake in my next video, so everybody got something that they liked. So I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even try out this recipe for yourself. Overall, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Really fantastic. The rough puff, once you know what to look for, is not actually that complicated. And I'm really glad that I have the other half of the batch in the freezer. So I can just make cookies with that as we get closer to Christmas. It'll be really simple. And I think the more you make this recipe, the easier it becomes. I love that I was able to prep things before. So the rough puff and the apple compote happened the day before. So the morning of, I was really just rolling out the pastry, putting things on top of it and baking it. So it's really, I think, good for the holidays, because if you have a bunch of people in the kitchen, you can sort of come in the day of and just say, I need the oven for 40 minutes, and that's it. I also think the more you make this, the easier it will get. So while it was challenging for me this time around, I love that there weren't a lot of things I had to do simultaneously, like for the silkiest buttercream, chocolate buttercream in this book, which was doing a ton of things simultaneously. So I would definitely make this again, and I think it'll only get easier the more that I do it. In terms of following her recipe, I followed everything to a T pretty much, except I didn't strain the apricot jam for that last step. I didn't have a sieve to put it through. I was just sort of like, I don't really care. So there were little pieces of apricot jam that you could see in the final product, but that didn't bother me at all. So I think you could omit that step and it would be perfectly fine. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was the perfect Thanksgiving, Christmas, just fall dessert, and I highly recommend you make it. The more comfortable you get with rough puff and with pastry in general, the more options that open up to you, because there are just infinite things you could put on top of rough puff that would be delicious. So I hope this video helped you, maybe gave you a little bit more confidence in doing it yourself. And I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that. I'm supposed to say that. Anyway, okay. Take care, guys. Bye.